Good morning, guys. Today I'm going to read an excerpt from 18 Days Underground Incredible Rescue Stories by Joanne Mattern. And the selection I'm going to read today is called Lost at Sea. Aldi novel Audalong's job wasn't supposed to be dangerous. The worst thing about it was that Aldi spent hours alone with nothing to do, so things could get pretty boring. The 18-year-old lived on a fishing hut called Rompong. Rompong sat on a wooden platform and floated in the Pacific Ocean, more than 75 miles away from his home in Indonesia. Aldi's main job was to light lamps on the hut at night to attract fish into traps and underneath the platform. Aldi was supposed to live in the hut for 6 months. Once a week, a ship brought supplies to him. Otherwise, he was alone in the middle of the ocean. But soon, he would be more alone than he ever could have dreamed. On the morning of July 14th, 2018, high winds battered the hut. Aldi stayed safely inside under the protection of the hut's thatched roof during the storm. The Rompong had been through storms before, so the teenager wasn't too worried that anything would happen. He was wrong. About 7 o'clock that morning, Aldi felt a sharp tug on the bottom of the Rompong. A sudden gust of wind had snapped the rope that anchored the hut to the sea floor. Suddenly, the Rompong was moving. Aldi was helpless to stop the hut as it floated away on the rising ocean waves. In time, the storm passed and the winds died down, but Aldi was in big trouble. Far from land and with no ships in sight, he was alone in the middle of nowhere. Aldi grabbed a radio he kept in the hut in case of trouble. He called his friends who were working on other Rompongs. "Phone the boss," he told them. "My anchor has snapped." But there was no answer. Maybe he was too far out to sea for anyone to pick up the signal. At first, Aldi wasn't too worried. The same thing actually happened to him twice before. Each time, people from the company he worked for had found him in a few days. "On the first day, I was okay," Aldi said later. "I wasn't stressed or panicking. I knew they would send a boat, but I was worried it would have to turn back because the winds and the waves were strong." Meanwhile, Aldi tried to look on the bright side. He had shelter, food, water, and cooking gas. He was sure someone would come looking for him soon. To pass the time, Aldi sang songs, made a calendar to mark off the days, and read the Bible. And he kept looking for boats on the horizon. But as the days passed, Aldi began to get scared. His food supply was soon gone, even though he rationed it to last as long as possible. He caught fish from the ocean and cooked them on a small stove in the hut. Running out of water was a bigger problem. Aldi's supply of fresh water was used up. Rainstorms provided some fresh water for him, but without the rain, Aldi had no fresh water. It was cruel to look out over the ocean and see nothing but water he couldn't drink. Aldi knew drinking the salty ocean water would make him sick and could even kill him, but he had to think of something. Then Aldi got an idea. Maybe he could strain the salt out of the ocean water. Aldi pulled up his t-shirt, which had gotten wet from the sea. He squeezed out a few drops of water and sucked them into his mouth. The water wasn't too salty. Aldi had found a way to make fresh water out of salt water. The small victory cheered him up. But the teenager soon faced another problem. He was out of cooking gas. How could he cook his food? Aldi did the only thing he could think of. He burned the Rompong's wooden fences to build a fire. Once again, Aldi's cleverness saved the day and made him feel hopeful. More days passed, then weeks. Aldi didn't know what to think. Surely people were looking for him. He thought about his family. Did they miss him? Did they wonder what happened to him? Maybe everyone thought he had drowned and called off the search. The hardest thing was the thought that I would never see my parents again, he said, that I would never see my island again, and never make it home alive. Aldi tried not to think these dark thoughts, but it was hard not to panic as time went on and on. Alone in his floating hut, he cried tears of sadness and fear. The ocean waves carried Aldi farther east every day. Soon the young man had no idea where he was. There was nothing to see but water in every direction. Then, one day, Aldi saw a ship on the horizon. His hope soared. Surely he would be rescued. Aldi jumped up and down on the deck of the Rompong. He waved his arms and yelled. Then he realized the awful truth. The huge ship was too far away to see him. Desperate to make contact, Aldi grabbed his radio and tried to make contact with the ship. To his delight, the captain answered. He promised to come back and get Aldi after the crew finished their day's work. Aldi was thrilled, but hours passed with no sign of the ship returning. Aldi realized they weren't coming back. He was still alone. Another ship will come, Aldi told himself. Surely the next ship will see me. Aldi was right. Another ship did come past. In fact, more than 10 ships came in sight. Each time, Aldi tried to call to them on his radio while he waved frantically for help. Each time, the huge freighters and tankers sailed right by him. The teenager knew he was nothing but a speck on the ocean to them. Even if they sailed right by, they couldn't see him floating alone in the vast ocean. It was August 31st. Aldi had been at sea for 48 days. He had run out of wood to burn, so he had no way to cook the fish he caught. Aldi had no choice but to eat them raw. Aldi didn't know it, but the ocean currents had carried him hundreds of miles until he was near the island of Guam, and his bad luck was finally about to change. Once again, Aldi saw a ship sailing toward him. It was a cargo ship from Panama, halfway around the world, called the M.P. Arpeggio. As he had so many times before, Aldi turned on his radio. This time he was able to find the same frequency as the Arpeggio was using. "Help, help, help," Aldi cried. He stood on the deck and waved a towel at the ship, which seemed so far away. Would anyone even hear or see him? Suddenly a voice spoke back to him. It was the ship's chief mate, Emmanuel Serrano. Aldi didn't understand the words Serrano said to him, but his heart leaped with hope. Someone knew he was alive. On board the Arpeggio, Serrano hurried to find the ship's captain, Narciso Centalion. He told Centalion about the distress call and the tiny hut floating at sea. Immediately, Centalion ordered the huge ship to change course. The cargo ship was about to become a rescue ship. Aldi rejoiced as he saw the ship coming closer and closer, but then he got scared. The ship was so big and his Rompong was so tiny. What if the Arpeggio hit him by accident? Or what if it could not send any help down to the small raft? Would Aldi be lost at sea once again? All he could do was hold his breath, hope, and pray. Aldi was right to worry. The giant cargo ship couldn't just pull up to the Rompong. Excuse me for just 1 second. At first, it couldn't even get close enough to Aldi to rescue him. It took 4 tries before the Arpeggio could come near the Rompong without creating huge waves that could have swamped the hut. Finally, Captain Centillion moved his ship as close as he could. Crew members threw a life preserver into the water. Aldi grabbed it and kicked his way through the water to the side of the cargo ship. But his ordeal wasn't over yet. Crew members lowered a wooden ladder over the side of the ship. Aldi managed to grab hold of the bottom rungs. Then he began a terrifying climb up the side of the huge ship, the ladder twisting and turning under his weight. A few times Aldi got stuck between the ladder and the side of the ship. He had to stop and rest many times. At last, he climbed his way close enough to the top. Crew members grabbed him and pulled him to safety. For a few minutes, Aldi did not have the strength to do anything besides sit on the deck and catch his breath. Crew members wrapped him in a blanket and gave him water to drink. Someone brought him a plate full of bread. Crew members tried to speak to Aldi, but they could not understand one another's language. They had to communicate through gestures and hand signals. Amazingly, after about 5 minutes, Aldi stood up. He shook hands with a crew member and smiled. Someone pulled up Google Translate on a computer. Using that technology, Aldi was able to tell his story to the astonished crew. Aldi's journey was not over yet, however. Captain Centillion spoke to officials over the radio. His new passenger had no passport, no identification, nothing but the clothes on his back. Because the cargo ship had been headed to Japan, officials told Centillion to continue to that country. Aldi's paperwork would be taken care of when he arrived. On September 6, Aldi and his new friends arrived in Japan. From there, he traveled to Tokyo, where he got on an airplane. Soon afterward, he landed in Indonesia. Aldi was finally home. On September 9th, Aldi was reunited with his family. Aldi was thrilled to be back home and to see his relatives, and he made all of them and himself a promise. From now on, he was staying on dry land.